In Washington, D.C., homicides are down 32%. Robberies are down 39%. Armed carjackings are down 53%. Assaults with a dangerous weapon are down 27%. In Washington, D.C., the rates of burglaries and assaults with a dangerous weapon are at their lowest point in 30 years. Nevertheless, because he's so tough on crime, President Trump today deployed hundreds of National Guardsmen and women into Washington, D.C. Send the U.S. military to become the police force in Washington, D.C. The lead in the Washington Post tonight, quote, President Donald Trump announced today that he is placing the D.C. police under direct federal control and will deploy the National Guard to the streets of Washington, an extraordinary flex of federal power that stripped city leadership of its ability to make law enforcement decisions and could expose residents of the nation's capital to unpredictable encounters with a domestically deployed military force. A domestically deployed military force. Because tough on crime. You think it's really about crime? You think it's really about being tough on crime? Do you want to maybe track down the axe and machete triple murderer Trump just released to the streets of Orlando to go ask him if he thinks it's about being tough on crime? Or you maybe want to pop in to ask Ghislaine at that Bureau of Prisons crown jewel facility that kind of looks like a community college? You want to go ask her? Think it's because he's so tough on crime? That said, I mean, let's be generous here. Maybe it's not really just a generic tough on crime thing. Maybe it's specifically because it's D.C., which is the seat of the U.S. federal government. So even for a city enjoying a 30-year low in violent crime, maybe that's still just an intolerable amount of crime, specifically because it's D.C., and D.C. is where the federal government is, and maybe he's just really sensitive about protecting the federal government. Maybe he's really sensitive and really focused when it comes to protecting the seat of the federal government from any kind of crime. January 6th, no, forget about that. He's just sensitive about it now. Maybe that's it. Well, let's see. Today's Monday. On Friday, this happened. A sustained violent attack on the headquarters of the federal government Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. See all those little pockmarks, those little holes? Those are bullet holes in the CDC. The gunman reportedly tried to get into the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. Security guards turned him away. He then drove to a nearby business, a nearby pharmacy, and took up a shooting position there. The Associated Press reports today that the man fired more than 180 shots into the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. More than 180 shots fired. He was found with 5 guns, including 4 long guns, and bullets that he fired at the CDC broke at least 150 windows. The bullets pierced blast-resistant windows in multiple buildings and spat glass shards into multiple offices. 1 police officer was killed. The gunman died as well. It's not clear if he shot himself or was shot by law enforcement. It is a miracle, obviously, that CDC personnel other than the police officer protecting them were not killed. The head of the agency that includes the CDC, Donald Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy, posted this online after the shooting. Then he posted this one as well. This is what he was posting the day after the shooting at the CDC, when a gunman fired more than 180 bullets into the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. This was the reaction of the man in charge of that agency. This was his response. It wasn't until later and after he finished posting his fishing pictures that he got around to expressing condolences for the, shooting or whatever. This major attack on a federal government facility, again, 180 shots fired into the CDC. This major attack on a federal government facility has so far garnered no response whatsoever from President Donald Trump, let alone an armed response into Atlanta, where the CDC headquarters is. But he did send in the National Guard to Washington, D.C. today because tough on crime, you think? Maybe it's not about crime. Maybe it's not about defending the federal government from threats, right? Maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's not about crime. Maybe it's not about any other thing he might voice. Maybe it's what you can see with your own two eyes. Maybe it's that he really enjoys using U.S. military force against American civilians on American soil and wants any excuse to do it anywhere he can. Watch what they do, not what they say. Because, I mean, given what else he's done on the issue of crime, does it make sense that him sending in the troops for a military takeover of Washington, D.C. is about crime? I mean, that's what he said. But what do you think based on what he's done? Because meanwhile, while he's talking about crime, he has sent in the National Guard and active duty U.S. Marines to Los Angeles as well, right? Supposedly to save that city from protests against him. That deployment was so inexplicable and so palpably disconnected from its purported justifications that the LA Times reported on a spike in calls to the GI Rights hotline, with military personnel telling that hotline they didn't want to be deployed to point guns at citizens. Military personnel telling that hotline they, quote, didn't want to be on the side of being armed occupiers in their own country. The New York Times reported the troops recoiling from Trump's use of them in Los Angeles. In more pungent terms, quote, at least one company commander and one battalion commander who objected to the mission were reassigned to work unrelated to the mobilization. Some troops became so disgruntled that there were several reports of soldiers defecating in Humvees and in the showers at the Southern California base where the troops are stationed, prompting tightened bathroom security. Tightened bathroom security. Despite that military triumph in Los Angeles, we've now got Trump using military bases now all over the country to hold massive new immigrant prison camps, which he is planning on military bases at Fort Bliss in Texas and Camp Atterbury in Indiana and Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst in New Jersey. Trump has also expanded huge swaths of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona into what he's calling, quote, military zones, in which he's legally expanded the boundaries of local military bases into huge hundreds of miles long territories, where he's now given U.S. active duty troops the instruction and authority to stop and search and arrest Americans on domestic U.S. soil. Watch what they do, not what they say. He wants U.S. military force deployed on U.S. soil facing inward as a show of force to the American people about what he and the government can do to you. People in D.C. are already protesting against it. This was just today. Just as people in Los Angeles protested against it when Trump tried it there as well. This weekend, people protested in Los Angeles against ongoing immigration raids and arrests there. Those protests have not stopped in Los Angeles, with or without the National Guard and the Marines there to try to scare everyone into not protesting. People protested in Columbus, Ohio this weekend as well. Hands along High Street, they called it. Protest in Columbus, Ohio, where protesters lined the streets for 8 solid miles, protesting against what Trump is doing. This woman in Florida is 104 years old. She has been protesting every week, every Thursday with her neighbors and friends. Her sign in this picture says here, girls just want to have fun. Ding for scientific research. She's 104. She'll be 105 years old this week. And she is protesting against the Trump administration 1 out of her every 7 days. What are you doing with your life, you spring chicken? When Donald Trump sent troops to Los Angeles this summer on the absurd pretext that some kind of war was on, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and other LA officials didn't just protest against it and try to stop it. They also warned the country that, yeah, he's doing this to us first, but it's going to be you next. They were clear-eyed about that. They were right. And we, clearly, are now in the part of the attempted authoritarian takeover where our authoritarian leader just starts trying to turn our own military to face us, the people of this country. And the questions that are equally important in response to that right now are, number one, what will the troops do about that? And number two, what will we do